April 1945, in the shattered streets of Ebermannstadt, a small town nestled in the Franconian hills of Bavaria. The air hangs heavy with the acrid scent of smoke from bombed-out buildings, mingling with the damp earth churned by retreating German vehicles. A young woman, barely 20, clad in the faded uniform of the Bund Deutscher Mädel, presses against the cold stone wall of a half-ruined bakery. Her heart pounds like the distant thunder of artillery, her fingers clutching a small bar of ersatz chocolate, bitter and rationed, a meager remnant of the Reich's promises. She hears the rumble of engines, not the familiar growl of Wehrmacht trucks, but the foreign whine of American jeeps, their tires crunching over rubble as GIs advance, rifles slung casually, their voices carrying in an unfamiliar tongue laced with laughter. This fleeting moment amid the crumbling facade of the Third Reich captured the profound shift in the winds of war. As Allied forces swept through Germany in the spring of 1945, towns like Ebermannstadt fell with scarcely a shot fired, the once mighty Luftwaffe grounded, and the Wehrmacht in disarray. The Bund Deutscher Mädel, or League of German Girls, had been the female counterpart to the Hitler Youth, indoctrinating millions of young women into the Nazi ideology since its formal establishment in 1932. By 1944, membership had swelled to over 4.5 million, made compulsory for all Aryan girls aged 14 to 18, with younger ones funneled through the Young Mädel. These leaders, often teenagers themselves elevated to positions of authority, were trained not just in domestic skills and racial purity doctrines, but in unwavering loyalty to the Führer. They organized camps, led marches, collected for the Winter Hilfswerk charity drives, and by war's end assisted in air raid defenses and hospital duties. Yet, as American tanks rolled in, this moment mattered because it marked the collision of propaganda-fueled dread with the reality of occupation, exposing the fragility of Nazi indoctrination and planting seeds of doubt in the hearts of those who had been groomed to embody the regime's future. For these BDM leaders, the expectations forged in years of Nazi rhetoric painted a grim portrait of the invading Americans. Schooled in tales of barbaric Yankees and Jewish Bolshevik hordes, they anticipated retribution on a scale that mirrored the atrocities their own forces had wrought across Europe. Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels had warned in broadcasts and films that Allied soldiers, especially the Americans with their Negro troops, would unleash waves of violence, pillage, and violation upon German womanhood. One BDM girl, Helga Brockmann, later recalled the rumors swirling in her Leipzig hospital ward, whispers of animal-like faces among the invaders, evoking fears of uncultured hordes descending like the Mongols of old. Edeltraut G., a young woman in Berlin in 1945, confided to her diary, "There are rumors that soon Negroes will arrive as occupation troops. That will be horrible. Then one will no longer be able to be in the street as a girl." The BDM curriculum had reinforced this, teaching racial hierarchies where the Aryan race stood supreme, and the Americans, portrayed as materialistic capitalists corrupted by jazz and democracy, were expected to treat the defeated as subhumans, exacting revenge for the bombed cities of London and the liberated camps of Dachau. These young leaders, many of whom had waved flags at parades and sung anthems of eternal victory, braced for humiliation, assault, or worse, their ideology insisting that defeat would strip them of dignity and reduce them to victims of inferior foes. Yet what unfolded in those initial encounters shattered these illusions with unexpected courtesy. In Ebermannstadt, as in countless other towns, American GIs entered without the anticipated fury. Frieda Streit, a 17-year-old BDM member who had served her compulsory year baking bread and aiding the war effort, watched from her family's home as U.S. troops commandeered the building as a command post on April 14, 1945. Far from the rampaging conquerors of Nazi films, these soldiers were disciplined, sharing rations and even dancing with local girls in defiance of non-fraternization orders. Straight later reflected, "The Americans came and found no resistance in the town, so there was no real fighting." In one poignant instance, a group of BDM leaders still in their identifiable skirts and blouses emerged from hiding to face a patrol. Expecting mockery or aggression, they were met instead with salutes, crisp military acknowledgments of their presence, not as enemies but as young women in a war-torn land. Historical accounts from the U.S. Army's occupation reports document such moments. Soldiers, many barely older than the girls they encountered, extended gestures of respect rooted in their own cultural norms of chivalry. One GI, in a letter home preserved in the National Archives, described saluting a cluster of Nazi youth gals out of habit, noting their flushed faces and averted eyes. Thea D., a former BDM participant from Leipzig, admitted in post-war interviews the shock of this civility. Instead of the uncultivated humanity she feared, the Americans offered chewing gum and real chocolate, smooth, sweet bars from Hershey's, symbols of an abundance unimaginable under rationing. This chocolate, passed from hand to hand, melted on tongues accustomed to scarcity, evoking not just physical satisfaction, but a glimpse of a world where resources flowed freely, unhindered by totalitarian control. Factual records underscore the scale of this contrast. By May 1945, the U.S. Army had occupied vast swaths of Western Germany, with over 1.6 million troops interacting with a civilian population of millions, including former BDM members now adrift in defeat. Military court-martial documents reveal 552 reported rapes by American soldiers in the first half of 1945, a grim statistic reflecting isolated breakdowns in discipline amid the chaos. Yet these were exceptions amid a broader policy of restraint. The Joint Chiefs of Staff Directive JCS 1067 aimed for firm but non-vindictive occupation, and soldiers' pocket guides emphasized treating Germans as defeated foes, not personal enemies. In Bavaria alone, requisitions displaced thousands, but aid programs distributed over 100,000 tons of food in the first months, including chocolate rations that became legendary. BDM leaders like Ursula Sibel, who had led younger girls in crafts and hikes, found themselves working as cleaners for U.S. barracks, paid in coffee and canned goods. Sibel's diary entry from June 1945 captures the bewilderment. They salute us as if we were officers, not the vanquished. Their chocolate tastes of freedom, not conquest. Eva Maria Kuchling-Marsden, another young woman in the orbit of Nazi youth groups, noted in her April 1945 writings the return to normal again under American watch, though tempered by fears of home confiscation. These encounters, documented in oral histories collected by the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum and German archives, reveal a pattern. Initial terror giving way to reluctant admiration as GI's casual demeanor and material generosity clashed with the rigid hierarchies of the Reich. This emotional chasm bred transformation, reshaping perceptions forged in the crucible of Nazi education. For BDM leaders, indoctrinated to view democracy as weak and decadent, the respectful salutes and shared chocolate bars pierced the veil of superiority. What began as blushing embarrassment, cheeks reddening under the gaze of foreign soldiers offering unexpected honor, evolved into ideological reevaluation. Frida Streit, after dancing with GIs and tasting their abundant provisions, saw opportunity beyond the ruins. Germany offered limited chances for a young woman, she later said, prompting her emigration to America in 1953. Helga Brockman, reflecting in 1987, compared her compulsory BDM service to East German youth groups, acknowledging the naivety that blinded her to atrocities like the Holocaust. Data from post-war surveys by the U.S. military government show that by 1946, over 60% of former Nazi youth expressed disillusionment with the regime, with many crediting Allied interactions for humanizing the enemy. The chocolate, recurring in these tales, became more than sustenance. It symbolized American democracy's promise of plenty, where individual freedoms yielded innovation and generosity, contrasting the Reich's enforced scarcity and conformity. One BDM leader, anonymous in a 1946 denazification questionnaire, confessed, "Their salute made me question everything. Our leaders promised eternal victory, but these men offered respect without demand. This shift eroded the racial and ideological barriers, fostering a grudging acceptance that the Allies' victory stemmed not from barbarism, but from a superior ethos of liberty. As the occupation deepened, these transformations rippled through society. BDM structures dissolved under Allied bans on Nazi organizations, with leaders like Ilse Kleinberger, who had volunteered in occupied Poland, now aiding in reconstruction efforts. The chocolate bars handed out by the thousands. U.S. records note distribution of over 500,000 pounds in Bavaria alone, served as bridges, melting away suspicions. In Nuremberg, where Straight worked for an Oklahoma officer, such gestures led to personal bonds, challenging the propaganda of cultural inferiority. By 1947, as the Marshall Plan infused billions into recovery, former BDM members witnessed democracy's abundance firsthand, with food shipments symbolizing a new order. Renata P., a 20-year-old in May 1945, despaired that Germany is occupied, eradicated. Yet by year's end, her writings hinted at hope amid the chocolate-scented aid packages. In the epilogue of this encounter, the blush of a saluted BDM leader lingers as a poetic emblem, linking personal humility to the broader triumph of freedom over tyranny. That simple gesture, amid the rubble, unveiled the lie of Nazi invincibility, revealing abundance not as a tool of domination, but as the fruit of democratic ideals, where respect flows from equality and chocolate, once a luxury of the victors, becomes a shared promise of renewal. In this, the skies of ideology cleared, showing that true strength lies not in enforced purity, but in the open hand of liberty, nourishing souls long starved by dogma.